The palace shone like a star in the dark sky. Its towers glimmered with alien metal that no human eyes had ever seen before. The wind whispered across the crystal floors, carrying a chill that made every visitor shiver. And tonight, the palace was alive with expectation. Princess, the youngest heir of the empire, walked through the grand hall. Her skin shimmered with soft gold and her eyes glowed a faint violet. Every step she took echoed like a heartbeat in the silent hall. She raised her hand. Her command was simple, precise, and absolute. Prepare the ceremonial gates, no exceptions. The royal guards bowed instantly, their bodies stiff, their armor clicking in unison. But there was one figure who did not move. His name was James, a human, out of place in every sense, wearing a uniform that seemed fragile against alien metal. Yet he stood tall, shoulders squared, staring at the princess. No bow, no hesitation, only calm. His violet eyes narrowed. "Guard," she said, her voice like soft thunder. "I said move." James' lips tightened, his gaze did not waver. "I will not," he said simply. The hall went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause, listening. Every alien guard looked at him with disbelief. The humans who had been brought to the palace for diplomacy would have crumbled under such authority. But James, he stood firm. Tilted her head, curious, not angry, not yet. She had never met a human like this. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. "Yes," James replied, "and I know why you issued this order, but I cannot obey." The princess frowned. Her voice dropped lower, colder. "This is not negotiation, this is law." James' eyes flickered, a hint of pain crossing his human features. "I know your law, I know your empire, but I follow something older, something stronger." Guard captain stepped forward, a towering figure with silver armor. "He must obey, princess. Orders are orders. The ceremony is in 3 minutes if we delay." James shook his head. "No." The captain hesitated. Then, as if sensing the shift in the room, he lowered his gaze. Felt a strange pull in her chest. Rage, curiosity, something else. She had issued commands to generals, warlords, and advisors. They had bent, even broken, but this human, he was different. "Explain," she said. "A command, yes, but also a question." James took a step forward. Each movement deliberate, weighted with the confidence of someone who had survived countless impossible moments. "Princess, what you ask will end in death. Not mine, not yours, but theirs." Her eyes widened. Whom? "The people of the courtyard. The ceremony is a trap. Someone plans to strike tonight. If the gates open, they die. If I stand here, at least some will survive." The words hung in the air. Alien guards exchanged glances, whispers rippling through the hall like static. None had ever spoken of death during a ceremony. Death was distant, abstract, but James' words carried weight, reality, truth. His fingers twitched. She was trained to command without question, to enforce law without hesitation. But something about this human, his calm, his certainty, struck her. She felt a spark she had never felt before. "Why?" she asked softly, almost like a whisper she didn't mean to speak. James met her eyes. "Because someone has to, because someone must be human, and I am the one standing here." The hall trembled as tension mounted. Outside, the sky darkened further, clouds rolling in like shadows of doom. The palace itself seemed to hold its breath. Looked at her hand. She could summon the ceremonial gates herself with a flick, with a word. But she didn't yet. Because James was human, and humans were unpredictable, dangerous, courageous, and perhaps the only ones capable of seeing the truth when no alien dared. For a moment silence ruled, a heartbeat too. Then a faint sound, a click in the distance, like a trap being set in motion. His eyes widened in sudden realization. This was not mere defiance. This was protection. James was standing between her people and disaster, between life and death. Her hand shook slightly, though she did not lower it. Her heart raced, faster than she had ever known. And in that moment, something shifted. A bond was forming, not of law, not of command, but of trust. And as she stared at the human who refused her order, she understood a truth that no lesson had ever taught her. Bravery could come in the smallest, quietest form. James did not bow, he did not speak again. he only waited. And that waiting was enough. The palace bells began to toll. Their sound was deep, vibrating through the crystal halls and echoing into the outer gardens. The ceremony had begun. His fingers hovered over the command console. Her heart pounded, each beat a drum of fear and curiosity. She had never felt uncertain before, not in a battle, not in a council, not in the private chambers where laws were made and broken. But now she hesitated. James remained still, a statue of human resolve. His eyes scanned the hall, alert, unblinking. Every muscle in his body was poised, ready to act, ready to protect. The alien guards began moving slowly, nervously, under the pretense of ceremony. Their motions were stiff, careful. It was clear they sensed James' defiance, and they were afraid. His voice was barely a whisper, though it carried across the hall. "Why do you stay human in the face of my command?" James met her gaze. "Because someone must, and tonight that someone is me." The first movement from the courtyard startled everyone. A shadow flitted across the open gates, fast, almost invisible. A chill swept through the palace. This was no imagined threat. This was real. His pulse raced. "Stop them," she ordered, her voice shaking for the first time. James did not move immediately. He was calculating, watching. Then, like a coiled spring, he leapt forward. Not toward the gates, not toward the intruder, but toward the guards closest to him. With a human's sudden, brutal strength, he blocked the first swing of a ceremonial blade aimed at the courtyard. The guards froze. The intruder was not yet seen, but the palace felt alive with danger. "Princess," James said, his voice firm yet calm, "stay behind me." Felt an unfamiliar surge, fear mixed with admiration. She had always been the one to command, always. But now she was just another person in danger. And James was extraordinary. The intruder emerged, a blur of dark energy, armed with weapons alien guards had never encountered. They moved with precision, their goal obvious. The ceremonial crowd was exposed, innocent, unaware. James' hands moved with uncanny skill. He intercepted, deflected, redirected, protecting not just the princess, but the Empire's citizens, the ceremonial guards, even the outer walls themselves. He was a single human against what could have been many, and yet somehow he was enough. His violet eyes widened. She had seen warriors, generals, and soldiers. She had seen entire battalions crushed under her command. But this human, he moved with courage she had never imagined. Her breath caught as a small figure stumbled into danger. A young alien child, a page of the court, had run too close to the gates. James dove, catching the child mid-fall, holding them close to his chest. Felt something twist inside her. Gratitude, shock, a new respect that went beyond admiration. It was fear, yes, but a fear tempered with awe. The intruder was relentless. Energy crackled through the hall, shards of crystal shattered. Guards fell back, their formation breaking under chaos. The ceremonial floor was slick with light, reflections shimmering like stars in a storm. And yet James stood firm, each move precise, each choice deliberate, each risk entirely human. His voice broke through the chaos, shouting, "James, behind me, protect me." He did always, a shield, a barrier, a living testament to courage and defiance. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The intruder hesitated, sensing something unexpected. The human guard was unlike any threat they had faced, unlike any soldier, any weapon, any plan. His heart thundered in her chest. She realized something terrifying and wonderful at the same time. She could no longer command him. She could only trust him. And trusting James meant placing her life, and perhaps the lives of everyone in the palace, in human hands. The intruder struck again, faster this time. James countered, but a bright flash of energy knocked him back. He hit the floor hard, sliding across the polished hall. Gasped, rushing forward, "James." He looked up at her, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Yet even then his eyes burned with unwavering courage. "Princess, stay calm, I'm not done." In that moment understood. Commands and titles meant nothing here. Only bravery mattered, only heart, only humanity. And one human, one ordinary, fragile, yet unyielding human, was standing between her people and death. The palace trembled. Outside, the storm grew louder. Inside, chaos reigned, and in the eye of it all, a human stood, fearless, unshakable. The palace walls shook with energy. Crystals in the grand hall cracked, sending shards glittering across the floor like deadly rain. The intruder retreated for a moment, regrouping, and the guards scrambled to recover. Chaos was no longer a threat, it was a certainty. Knelt beside James as he rose, wiping blood from his brow with a trembling hand. "You can't keep doing this alone," she said, her voice sharp yet laced with fear. "I will command the guards, together." James shook his head. "No, orders won't help your guards. They follow rules, not instinct. They will hesitate, but I act." His violet eyes widened in disbelief. She had trained for decades to command armies, to enforce laws, to maintain order. And yet here, in this moment, a single human, fragile, small, and entirely out of place, was more capable than her entire command. "Why do you risk your life for us?" she asked softly, almost to herself. James looked toward the shattered ceremonial gates. His jaw tightened. "Because if I don't, none of you survive, and because someone has to see the truth, Princess. Someone has to act when everyone else freezes." A low rumble echoed through the palace. The intruder had returned, moving faster this time, flanked by shadowy figures whose forms shifted and shimmered like smoke. The palace guards panicked. Some fled. Some tried to fight. Some froze entirely, their training meaningless against the unknown. James turned to, "Go, lead your people to safety." "No," she whispered, refusing. "I won't leave you." He smiled faintly, blood streaking his face. "And I won't leave you, but you must trust me." Before she could respond, the intruder struck again. Energy arced through the hall, slicing through the air. James threw himself forward, catching the first strike with his body. Pain exploded across his chest, but he held his ground. His hands trembled. She had never seen courage like this. Not in the greatest warriors of her empire, not in her tutors, not in her generals. Courage like James was raw, human, and terrifyingly beautiful. Then came a whisper, faint, almost lost in the chaos. "There." She froze. The voice came from the shadows near the throne, where the High Council had gathered. One of the ministers, a trusted advisor, stepped forward. His face was pale. "Princess, the ceremony, this was never just tradition. It was a trap set by the council itself. They wanted to test loyalty, or eliminate threats." His heart stopped. Her world, her palace, her empire, every corner of it was riddled with betrayal. "Why?" she asked, voice cracking. "They feared change. They feared humans. They feared you," the advisor whispered. "And if the gates had opened, the courtyard, the citizens, they would have been slaughtered to prove a point." His violet eyes shot to James. The human guard had sensed it all along. He had known danger no one else saw. He had acted when everyone else hesitated. Tears welled in her eyes. She wanted to reach out to pull him close, to tell him he had saved everything. But words failed. All she could do was watch. James scanned the hall, calculating their next move. "We can't stay here. The council will send more to finish this." Nodded, "Then we go together." James extended his hand. It was steady, warm, alive, and for the first time realized that courage was not about titles, nor power, nor even knowledge. Courage was a choice. She took his hand, and in that simple gesture a bond formed, stronger than fear, stronger than duty, stronger than betrayal. They moved as one through the shattered hall, avoiding energy blasts and shadowed figures. The guards who remained behind them followed in stunned silence, unsure whether to fight or flee. As they reached the palace gates, the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. The courtyard stretched before them, empty except for a single figure, a young page, unharmed, watching the sky. Knelt beside the child. "You're safe," she whispered. James' gaze never left the shadows. "Not yet," he said. "This isn't over." And in that moment, realized something profound. She had always thought herself in control. She had believed that as a princess, as a ruler, her command was absolute. But standing beside James, she understood the truth. Some forces could not be commanded. Some dangers could not be predicted. And some heroes came from the smallest, most fragile, most human hearts. The palace trembled behind them. The storm of betrayal was not yet over. but for the first time did not feel fear. She felt trust. She felt hope, and above all, she felt awe. For the human beside her had chosen to stand, and that choice had changed everything. The dawn was pale and cold, washing the palace in a light that felt almost unreal. Broken crystals from the hall glimmered like fallen stars. Smoke rose from shattered pillars, curling into the sky, but there was no time to admire it. Danger still lurked in every corner. And James moved quickly through the courtyard. Her hand rested on the hilt of a ceremonial blade she had never intended to use. James' grip on hers was firm, unyielding, yet protective. Every instinct screamed caution. Every shadow held a threat. "They know we survived," James said, eyes scanning the palace walls. "They will follow." Nodded, the council, the ministers, they wanted this. They wanted the ceremony to fail, to prove something, or to destroy me. Or us. James didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened. Then, softly, almost to himself, "They think fear controls people. They're wrong. Courage does." Looked at him, truly looked for the first time outside the palace halls, outside ceremonies and commands. He was not just a guard, not just a human among aliens. He was something entirely different, something impossible, and yet real. A sudden noise cut through the quiet, the metallic clatter of armored footsteps. The council's enforcers were coming, fast, relentless. Their shadows moved like predators over the cracked stone floors. "Split?" asked, breathing hard. James shook his head. "Together, always together. We can't divide, not now, not ever." They ran toward the eastern wing of the palace, a part few humans had seen. Corridors twisted like a labyrinth. Doors swung open to reveal empty rooms, each one bearing the marks of chaos. Shattered glass, overturned tables, scorched floors. The remnants of betrayal lingered in the air like a choking smoke. And then they saw it. A figure tall, cloaked in dark energy, stood in the center of the corridor, blocking their path. Its eyes glowed like embers, and in its hands, a weapon pulsed with alien light, ready to strike. James stepped forward, placing himself between the figure and, "Go behind me," he shouted. "I'm not leaving you," she said, grabbing his arm. He met her gaze, and for a moment something unspoken passed between them. Trust, understanding, a silent vow. "Then stay close or die with me." The figure moved, fast, brutal. Its strikes were precise, calculated, designed to kill instantly. James dodged, countered, and struck back with a ferocity that seemed impossible for a human. But even he could not withstand the power forever. Watched, horrified, as he was pushed back, sliding across the corridor, sparks flying from his uniform where alien energy struck. Her instincts screamed at her to act. But what could she do? She was a princess, not a warrior. And yet, something deep inside her stirred. The fight slowed for a moment, giving her an opening. She grabbed a broken shard of crystal from the floor and hurled it at the figure. It struck the shoulder, and the figure staggered, giving James the chance to strike again. "Run," James commanded. Hesitated, then together they darted down a hidden stairwell James had noticed during the chaos. The palace shifted above them, alive with shadows and echoes. Every step was a risk, every breath precious. At the bottom, the stairwell opened into a long, abandoned tunnel. Dust covered the floor. Broken lanterns hung from the ceiling. The air was thick, heavy, smelling of age and neglect. They paused, catching their breath. James leaned against the wall, blood dripping from multiple cuts, yet his eyes burned with determination. Knelt beside him, wiping his face gently. "You're bleeding," she said softly, fear and admiration mingling. James shook his head. "Doesn't matter, they can't stop us, not if we keep moving." His mind raced. "The council, they won't just stop at the palace, they'll hunt us everywhere, and the people," her voice cracked. "The citizens, they'll pay if we don't act fast." James looked at her. "Then we act together, and we show them that courage isn't just a word, it's a choice. Every second, every breath, every life saved is a rebellion." Swallowed hard. She had always believed her power came from titles, laws, and fear. But now, standing in a shadowed tunnel with a human whose courage everything she had known, she realized something terrifying and exhilarating. Real power came from heart, from bravery. from the willingness to stand when the world demanded you kneel. Above them, the palace groaned as another explosion shook the walls. The storm outside raged harder, wind and rain battering the crystal towers. And in the depths of that tunnel, two unlikely allies, one alien princess, one human guard, prepared to face the full wrath of an empire that had betrayed them both. James reached for her hand again. We move at dawn and we fight, not for titles, not for law, but for life and for truth. Nodded, squeezing his hand tightly. Her fear was still there, her uncertainty too, but courage, real courage, had taken root in her heart. And in that moment, she understood. This fight would not just be for survival. It would be for everything she had ever believed in and everything she had yet to discover about humanity and herself. The tunnel ended abruptly at a hidden courtyard, overgrown with alien flora. The palace loomed behind them, a fractured monument to betrayal. Rain fell in cold sheets, soaking in James, but they did not stop. Every step forward was a step into danger, but also a step toward hope. They know we're alive, whispered, her voice shaking. The council, they won't rest until. They will try, James interrupted, his tone calm yet deadly serious. But fear doesn't protect them anymore. Courage does, yours, mine, ours. His heart skipped. She had never felt words hit so hard. Courage, a word she had always understood in theory. Now she felt it like fire in her chest, alive, impossible to ignore. They moved through the courtyard carefully, slipping past patrols and traps that the council had left in haste. Shadows shifted, alien guards emerging and disappearing like ghosts. But something had changed. Wherever James went, the air seemed to hold a different weight, a presence that commanded respect and fear simultaneously. Follow me, James said, leading her to a small outbuilding abandoned long ago. Inside, the remnants of old machinery offered makeshift cover. Looked around. We can't fight them all, not like this. James shook his head. We don't have to, not all of them, just enough to show them humans, your people, won't be controlled by fear. Stand with me, princess. Show them what courage looks like. Her violet eyes met his. She understood now. This wasn't just survival. This was leadership in its form, not by law, not by title, but by example, by bravery. By refusing to bow even when every law, every tradition, every expectation demanded it. A sudden crash outside shattered the moment. Guards had discovered their hideout. Their armor glinted in the pale light, weapons drawn, eyes burning with suspicion and loyalty twisted by fear. James stepped forward, placing himself between them and the intruders. Stand back, he shouted. His voice carried a force had never heard in a human before. Command, authority, pure, unyielding will. The guards hesitated, not because they wanted to, but because they were unsure. No one had ever faced this kind of courage, this defiance, this human bravery. Took a deep breath. Do not strike them first, she said. We fight smart, not blind, and we survive. James nodded, his eyes scanning the courtyard. Then, in a sudden, breathtaking move, he charged forward. The first guard lunged at him, but James was faster, dodging, spinning, disarming him without a scratch to the man. One by one, he faced them, his actions precise, each movement a testament to instinct, training, and sheer human will. Watched, awe mingling with fear. She realized that humans, fragile, mortal, unpredictable, could be unstoppable when they chose to be, and she had chosen this human. A shout rang out from the courtyard entrance. Another wave of guards, larger and better armed, poured in, but James did not falter. He fought with a rhythm, a grace, a courage that seemed impossible. Every strike protected not only, but the ideals she had believed in her entire life, justice, protection, and truth. And then a cry echoed. One of the palace pages, hiding nearby, had been spotted. James' eyes flared. Without hesitation, he dashed, catching the child just as a blast of energy hit the ground where the child had stood moments before. His chest tightened. Tears sprang to her eyes, not from fear, but from awe, from disbelief. From gratitude so deep it burned. This human, this ordinary, fragile human, had just saved life after life, risking everything with no thought for himself. The courtyard fell silent for a heartbeat. The guards hesitated again, and in that moment stepped forward. She raised her voice, clear, commanding, not as a princess enforcing law, but as a leader who had learned what true bravery meant. "Stop," she shouted. "Look at him. Look at what he does for life, for truth, for all of you. Are we cowards who follow orders blindly, or are we strong enough to protect those who cannot protect themselves?" The guards faltered, unsure. Fear was breaking, courage was rising, and in that silence, James extended his hand to her again. Took it without hesitation. And together they stood in the rain-soaked courtyard, two figures against the Empire, a human and a princess, ready to challenge not only the Council's betrayal, but the very heart of what it meant to be powerful. Above, the storm raged. Below, life teetered on the edge of chaos. And in the center of it all, courage burned brighter than any crystal, any weapon, any law. For tonight, survival was only the beginning. The rain had stopped, leaving the courtyard slick and gleaming like liquid crystal. Mist rose from the ground, curling around the broken pillars and shattered walls. The palace no longer felt like a place of power. It felt like a tomb for secrets long buried. And James stood side by side, surveying the aftermath. Guards who had survived either fled or hesitated, unsure where loyalty truly lay. And in that uncertainty, courage bloomed. A shadow fell across the courtyard. A figure stepped forward, a council minister one had trusted most. His eyes were cold, calculating. His hands held a small device humming with alien energy. "Princess," he said smoothly, "I see you've learned the cost of disobedience." His eyes narrowed. "You set this trap. You would have killed your own citizens just to prove loyalty or fear." The minister smiled thinly. "Fear is control, loyalty is optional. You misunderstand human nature, princess, but perhaps this human has enlightened you." James stepped forward, blocking the minister's path. "Stop him," he commanded, but it wasn't just an order, it was a promise. Protection, defiance, human courage made flesh. The minister's smile faltered. "So predictable," he muttered. With a flick of his hand, energy surged toward James. James dove rolling across the wet stones, but the blast tore through the courtyard. Crystal fragments exploded around them, was thrown back, landing hard against a pillar. Pain seared her side, but she forced herself up. She would not let fear take root. "James," she shouted. He scrambled to his feet, blood streaking his face, every movement desperate but precise. "Stay close," he yelled. The minister raised the device again, more aggressively this time, realized the depth of betrayal. Every council member who had nodded silently during ceremonies, every advisor who had smiled behind her back, they had all conspired to remove her, to control her empire by fear, to silence the voice of truth. His chest burned with anger and shock, and then a terrible understanding hit her. The only one standing between life and death was James. She could not save everyone alone, but he could if she gave him the chance. She swallowed hard, stepping beside him. "We fight," she said, "not because we must, but because we will, for the people, for truth, for life." James' eyes met hers. No hesitation, only trust, only courage, only the promise that together they could face the impossible. The fight began again, faster, deadlier. James moved like a storm, dodging, deflecting, striking. Every move was calculated, human instincts amplified by sheer determination. But the minister was clever, attacking from multiple angles, summoning shadowed enforcers from hidden passages. Grabbed a fallen crystal shard, joining the fight, not with skill but with heart. She struck when she could, blocked when necessary, protected when possible. And she saw what James had already known: courage was contagious. Slowly, the surviving guards began to rally. Witnessing the bravery of a single human and a princess, they realized something profound. The rules they had followed, the laws they had obeyed, meant nothing against truth and courage. They joined in, cautiously but resolutely. The minister's device hummed louder, brighter. He raised it high, preparing a strike that could wipe out everyone in the courtyard. James surged forward, intercepting him. The blast struck James directly. The human guard stumbled, pain etched across his features, yet he did not fall. Scream tore through the mist. She ran to him, catching him as he faltered. His strength was failing, but his eyes, those human, fierce, burning eyes, met hers. "Princess," he whispered, voice weak but unwavering. "Protect them, protect your people, trust yourself, trust humanity." Tears streamed down her face. "James, don't." He smiled faintly, a glimmer of warmth in the storm of pain. "It's enough, you've learned." The minister lunged, but fueled by grief and courage, struck the device with the crystal shard. Sparks flew. Energy erupted. The blast threw the minister back, unconscious or worse. James slumped into her arms. His chest rose and fell slowly. Pain etched into every line of his face, but he smiled once more, faintly. "Well done, Princess." Held him tightly, sobbing, her heart breaking and soaring all at once. She had lost nothing and gained everything. A lesson more powerful than any law, any title, any empire. Humans were fragile, yes, but they were brave. They were unstoppable when courage chose them. And she had witnessed it firsthand. The storm outside had passed, leaving pale light. Broken, battered, exhausted, they stood together in the courtyard. The rebellion had begun. The betrayal had been exposed. But the real victory was far deeper. Whispered into his ear, her voice trembling. "Thank you for showing me what it means to be human." James' hand twitched in hers. "Always, Princess, always." And in that quiet, broken moment, amidst the ruins of palace and trust, something eternal was born. Courage, humanity, hope. The palace was silent now, but the silence was alive. Every shattered crystal, every scorched wall, every overturned chair whispered of betrayal, courage, and survival. The storm had passed, leaving the sky pale and washed with the first light of dawn. Held James in her arms, his injuries severe but his spirit unbroken. Around them, the surviving guards and citizens stirred, their eyes wide with awe and newfound respect. What they had witnessed was more than survival. It was a revelation. "Princess," a recovered guard said softly, bowing his head, We will follow you always." Looked around. The betrayal of the council had been revealed, their plans foiled. The palace was fractured, but her people had survived. And for the first time, she felt the weight of leadership in its truest sense, not as a title, not as law, but as responsibility and courage. She turned to James. "We need to get you healed," she said, her voice trembling. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined." James smiled faintly, wincing from the pain. "I've done what any human should, but now it's your turn. Lead them, protect them, teach them to trust what they cannot command." Tears welled in her violet eyes. She had always been trained to command, to enforce, to control. But here, in the quiet aftermath, she understood power without courage is nothing. Law without heart is meaningless. And humanity could defy even the mightiest empire. She helped him to his feet. Together they walked through the shattered halls, past guards who now moved with purpose and citizens who looked at them with awe. Word would spread. A human had stood against betrayal. A princess had chosen trust over fear, and hope, fragile but bright, had returned. In the courtyard, the first rays of sunlight hit the crystals, scattering light across the wet stone like 1,000 tiny stars. Stopped, breathing deeply, letting the warmth wash over her. She looked at James. "You saved lives," she said. "You saved me, you saved everyone here." He shook his head. "No, you saved them too, by trusting me, by believing that courage mattered more than law or fear." Her chest tightened. She had always thought leadership was about command, about enforcing rules, about bending others to her will. But now she saw the truth. Leadership was about heart, about bravery, about standing when everyone else hesitated. Stepped forward, placing her hand gently on his. "We did this together." He met her gaze, eyes burning with human intensity. "Yes, together." Behind them, the surviving citizens began to move, helping one another, cleaning the rubble, rebuilding what had been broken. Fear was fading. Courage was rising. And in its place, a new kind of loyalty took root, not blind obedience, but trust, respect, and hope. Suddenly, a shout rang out. The remaining council members had attempted to flee, but were stopped by guards now loyal too. Their betrayal had been exposed, their power stripped. The Empire would have to reckon with them. Took a deep breath. She turned to James, feeling a strange warmth in her chest she had never known before, gratitude, respect, and something else, something deeper. She realized that courage once witnessed could change hearts forever. James winced, leaning slightly on her shoulder. "You'll rebuild," he said softly, "and you'll teach them what it means to be brave." Nodded, "Yes. And you've shown me that even one person, even a human, can change everything." He smiled faintly. "That's all any of us can do." They walked together toward the throne room, not as ruler and guard, but as equals, partners forged in fire and courage. Outside, the citizens cheered softly, their voices trembling with awe and relief. The Empire had survived, and something new had been born: trust, courage, and humanity. For Princess, the lesson was clear. Power was nothing without heart. Law meant nothing without courage. And humanity could stand when even the mightiest empires faltered. James looked at her. "Shall we begin?" His lips curved into a small, determined smile. "Yes, together." And as the first true light of morning spread across the shattered palace, it illuminated a new era. One where courage could not be commanded, only chosen. One where humans could stand tall among aliens. One where a princess and her human guard had changed everything, not by law, but by heart. The Empire would remember this day forever. Not for the betrayal, not for the destruction, but for the bravery of one human who refused to move, and one princess who learned to trust. And somewhere in the quiet halls, as the wind whispered across crystal towers, a bond stronger than fear, stronger than law, stronger than even time itself, took root. Courage had won, humanity had triumphed, and hope was alive again.